am he- I am here with Amberlee Gustafson. She is an advanced practitioner of body talk, a modality that combines ancient techniques with modern science to help your body heal itself. She was introduced to body talk as a teenager when her mom developed a bone marrow cancer, and it's been a big part of her life ever since. You can learn more about Body Talk and her work at www.amberleerose.com, where you can also get her free audio meditation, and we'll have links to that in the show notes. Welcome, Amberlee.
Hi, Wendy. Thanks for having me.
My pleasure. So, I mentioned in the intro that you were introduced to Body Talk as a teenager. Tell us your story.
Well, my mom developed a bone marrow cancer when I was young, and it was very scary for both of us. And a mutual friend found out about my mom, somebody who practices body talk, and invited her into the office and started working on her. And my mom was just so impressed with the work, with how she felt afterwards, that she decided to make an appointment for me. And I was actually very reluctant to go. I was 14 and I grew up in Miami, and none of my friends were doing anything like that, and I'd never heard of energy medicine, and I thought it was totally weird. Um, so I was kind of grumpy, and my mom still managed to get me there, so kudos to her. And it was actually the fact that I was so grumpy, I think, is why I remembered it so viscerally, because after the session, I just felt so peaceful and serene. So it was such a drastic change that I really took notice. And after that first session, I started making my own appointments and going in when I needed help with a physical or emotional issue.
And do you remember ever feeling that level of peace before in your life?
You know, that's a really great question. I was trying to think about that today, and I think so. I think I was a kind of peaceful child. But as you grow up, and especially the teen years, are just kind of tumultuous and things kind of happen. So it was kind of like a reconnection to that sense of peacefulness that I feel like is part of who I am.
And how did Body Talk affect your mom with her illness?
It's been really transformative for her. She is a strong advocate of using all the tools in your toolbox when you have something as aggressive as cancer. So she did do the kind of more harsh Western techniques. Thankfully for her, she didn't have to do chemo, but she did take some pharmaceuticals. So that kind of got the cancer to manageable levels. And then the body talk was more restorative and addressed the deeper issues that kind of led to cancer being able to develop. So she's actually, for her cancer, which is multiple myeloma, kind of a success story in terms of not relapsing. So it's been kind of amazing to see her heal on so many levels, and just also kind of get back in touch with that part of her that is also a peaceful being.
So, did you know that you wanted to become a practitioner of this?
It took a little while. I kind of got more and more interested in it. I went to college in Maine, which was very far from where I grew up, and I studied religion, and that kind of just helped open my mind a little bit more to different possible realities. That's kind of what I mostly took away from that education, was just learning how to see from different perspectives. And I think that really helped inform my choice to start studying this type of medicine, which I started doing upon graduating.
Okay. So, tell us, what is Body Talk?
So body talk is basically an energy medicine. You're working with tuning the energies of the body. And since the physical, mental, and emotional and energetic levels of the body are all basically the same thing, you're able to work with all levels of health at the exact same time, which is really neat. And it takes from traditional Chinese medicine, so you can work with meridians and you work with five-element theory, and with ancient Indian medicine, you're working with chakras and things like that. And then also you're able to kind of switch between different lenses of looking at the body, so you can work with organs, endocrines, and body parts, so that's the basic visceral body. You can work with emotions and stored memories and traumas. You can work with subconscious belief systems. So it's kind of like endless ways of looking at the body and endless possibilities of how you can work with a particular person and issue.
It sounds really all-encompassing.
Yeah, yeah.
Is there anything it doesn't do?
I mean, my immediate answer would be no, but if we talked for a really long time, I bet we can find something.
So what do most of the people that you see use it for?
So I get kind of a wide range of clients. I get people coming in for injury repair, people who have back pain, people who have knee problems, just really wanting to get back on their feet and get back to their lives. I also have people coming in with more emotional things, working with anxiety or depression. People who come in because they just like how it feels, they like how peaceful they feel, so they come in kind of like for maintenance, general maintenance.
Okay.
Yeah, a wide variety of things.
What is the difference between body talk and meditation?
So meditation, I think you can, through meditation, access a lot of the same things as with body talk. Body talk just kind of streamlines it for you, and as a client, you don't actually have to do anything. You just relax, and the practitioner kind of finds all the places in your body where things are being stored, where stress has impacted you, and just reconnects your body's own awareness to those places so that it can release. So it all happens on a subconscious level, whereas with meditation, you would be able to get to many of those places, I believe, with a lot of concentration, but perhaps not as many things all at once, and it would certainly take more effort.
How long has this been around?
You know, I think it's been around for around 25 years. I'll
Okay.
have to double check.
Who started it?
A man named John Veltheim, who's Australian, and he was a chiropractor and acupuncturist and Zen practitioner and Reiki master and all sorts of things. And upon being diagnosed with Epstein-Barr, he decided that what he wanted to do with the rest of his life was travel and teach healing. And in his travels, he accumulated more and more healing techniques and decided to combine what he found most effective in each technique into Body Talk and to share it.
Okay. So are you going to walk us through how this works?
Yeah, so what I was hoping to share with you today is one of the foundational techniques of Body Talk, which
Okay.
balances the left and right hemispheres of the brain.
Okay.
Great.
And why, before we do that, tell everybody why. I know why it's important, but tell everybody why it's important.
Absolutely. So your brain is really foundational to the health of your body and your mind. It constantly is monitoring what's going on in the body and maintaining all your systems. And your brain encounters a lot of stresses on the day-to-day. Physical stress can cause shock in the body and cause shock in the brain, emotional stress. And then even just walking around, we have electrical wires and Wi-Fi and all sorts of interference that can kind of short circuit the communication within our brain. Okay. So this technique is really great because it helps your brain reconnect any broken circuitry, any rewiring that needs to happen, so that you can be at your best in all aspects of your health.
Okay, perfect. So how do we start?
Okay, great. So what we're going to do is systematically cover the brain with one of our hands, and with the other hand we'll be tapping lightly on the head and the heart.
Okay.
And the visual aid might be helpful at this stage.
And we have that in the show notes. So go ahead and go, if you would like to download it now, press pause, go into wholebeinginc.com/podcast, and you will see this episode. You just click on that and you'll be able to download it. It will take you to the right page. You'll be able to download it from there and then come back and join us.
Wonderful. So to begin, we would just place one hand, it doesn't matter which hand, on the base of the skull. So just the back of the head, the occipital bone.
Okay.
And the other hand, you're going to use kind of like a wide hand. When we work with kids, we call it octopus hand, just to make sure that your tapping contacts both hemispheres of the brain.
Okay.
And then we're just going to begin lightly tapping on the head and taking some really deep breaths. And then on the heart. And the tapping on the brain just kind of wakes up the brain, brings the awareness to that area of the brain that you're focusing on. And tapping on the heart helps store the new information and really store the memory of that new connectivity. And then we'll take that hand that's on the skull, on the head, and move it up by one hand's breath. So you're just moving it up one position.
Okay.
And then we'll continue to tap on the head, taking deep breaths. And then on the heart. And then back to the head. And back to the heart. And then we can move up one more hand position. So we should be around the top of the head now.
So basically on the crown of the head?
Yes.
Okay.
Tapping on the head. You can tap over your hand or you can move behind or in front of it. Doesn't really matter. Deep breathing. Tapping on the heart. You want to do about 2 deep breaths in each position. And then we'll move forward. So now you should be about on your forehead, covering down to the top of your eyebrows. Continuing to breathe and tap on the head. And this frontal lobe is where we do a lot of our planning and thinking. So this is a really good one to balance if you're experiencing any kind of stress.
Seems harder to tap with my hand on this spot. That's really interesting. It's almost like my hand that I'm tapping with has become somebody else's hand that's not quite sure how to do this.
Well, it can feel a little bit like rubbing your belly and tapping your head, but it does get easier.
Yes.
So we'll just take another deep breath, tapping on the head, on the heart. And then the last position is putting both of your hands on the sides of the head.
Okay.
So you're kind of spanning across the brain. So you can take a second to just kind of feel that you have your brain between your hands. And with this position, we're able to target our emotional processing centers in the limbic brain. So this is another really important one. And then, since we don't have any tapping hands, we have 2 options. You can either imprint your hands and then let go, so you still really feel them there while you tap on your head and heart at the same time. Or you could do that with one hand at a time. So imprint your right hand and let it go, tap on the head and heart, and then imprint your left hand and let it go and tap on the head and the heart. So whatever feels most clear to you, because it's really all about intention. And just take a few deep breaths, balancing that final section of your brain. And that's it. And if you do get into the practice of it and the habit of it, it becomes very second nature and easy to do despite all the different positions.
What is the science behind the tapping?
So tapping itself actually comes from ancient India, and the idea is just that you're kind of creating an interference pattern. You're kind of disrupting whatever kind of run-of-the-mill stuff is going on and imposing a new way of being and bringing awareness to the area. So it's like you're giving an updated program for your brain to run.
Okay. And when you're working with clients, are they all in person or do you do this distance as well?
I do it in person and at a distance, yes.
Okay. How do you discover where those imbalances are when you're working with a client?
So what you do in a session is you basically are tuning into their body. And when you're in person, I use the client's hand to set up a signal with the body. So on the subconscious level, I'm setting up basically just a yes and no signal. And then I'm asking the body where the priorities are. So it's kind of a systematic process. So I'll ask, do we need to start with an organ, endocrine, or body part? Do we need to start with a memory or emotion? And just kind of go from there. You get all the details that you need, and then you do the tapping. And if it's a distance client, then I just use my own hand as a surrogate for that testing.
Okay. What are some of the success stories that or maybe there's one in particular that really has left an impression on you on how this works?
You know, I love getting all of the feedback from my clients, and it just kind of reminds me about how kind of wondrous healing is.
Yeah.
So I love seeing that reflected back to me, and I'd say some of the ones that are standing out are back pains that disappear after one session that people have been struggling with for years, because that's always exciting when that's
Yeah.
your experience. And the things that kind of come up are always so different. You can have a back pain in the same place for 3 or 4 different people. And for one person, maybe it's a memory about their mother, and another person, it's a decreased circulation there because of an emotion that's kind of keeping them slumped in a certain way. Yeah. There's
So I'm trying to wrap my head around how a session works, and I understand um, you're being guided by the body wisdom as you're asking these questions, but is there tapping happening, or what
yeah.
are you doing?
Yes.
Okay.
So you find those areas that are basically what we call broken communication in the body. So if
Okay.
you are having a knee pain, part of what's going on is that your body on a certain level isn't seeing what's going on there. And that's because some kind of stress has caused a short circuit of the communication. So there might be an emotion being held there. You might have knocked your knee that caused a physical short circuiting of your communication pathways. So you're tuning in and you're finding those things. So let's say we're releasing fear from the right knee along with a fearful memory from being 3 years old and being locked outside, along with hitting the knee on the pavement when you're 10, something like that. And when you have all the pieces that the body says are important, you hold that in your awareness and you do the tapping. You hold the knee as well physically. And you do the tapping on the head and the heart. And it's just doing the same thing. It's asking the brain to go look at that area, asking the inner awareness to go look at that area and those specific details, and asking it to release the emotions and repair the cells. And it's all done based on what your body indicates is the priority, and therefore what is a safe way to do things, because it is important to do things in order.
Okay. It's so interesting because I am such a big believer in energy and healing, the body healing itself, and yet there's something that keeps making me go, how does this work? It's just so interesting to say, what is, and it's probably the scientist in me that says, all right, what is the difference between this and a placebo?
Sure. Yeah. I mean, I wish honestly that I had studied physics, because I think that that's the most exciting to me realm of science, because when you get into quantum physics and entanglement and non-locality and all that kind of stuff,
Yep.
that's where body talk and this sort of medicine intersects with science. And I just don't have the vocabulary to really understand how to explain those things from a scientific perspective. But I really wish I did, because I think it would be outstanding.
Well, maybe we need to get you hooked up with a scientist so
I think
that they
that's what
can.
we need.
Yes. All right. Well, let me ask you just a couple of questions for you.
Mm-hmm.
Tell me one example in your own life where you've done this work and it really has been very transformative for you, to the point where you're like, okay, and I realized the first time you said this, first time you did it, you weren't expecting a lot and you were surprised by the piece. What is another time that you just were really blown away by what happened?
I would say the two times that are coming to mind from when I was a teenager and I was going, and I would still go, I would only make appointments when I had a physical thing, because it still didn't, I didn't really get it that it's all interconnected. So I was a very symptom-based healing seeker. And the two times that really stand out for me were once when I had this like terrible, terrible flu and cold, and my right ear was totally stopped up and I couldn't hear. And I was miserable, and it had lasted for weeks. And I went in and I was on the table, and while I was on the table, my ear cleared, like I felt it clear, and my throat cleared, and my sinuses cleared. And I had never had it be that, immediate. It was usually like the next day I felt better, or I felt better a little bit when I get off the table and then feel better and better. But that was like, whoa. That's when I started telling my friends.
Yeah.
Because I didn't know what they would think, but I had something to tell them. And the other time was when I was around 15, and I was really suffering with a menstrual irregularity.
Mm-hmm.
And I was experiencing menstrual symptoms for over 30 days. I was bleeding, basically, and I was feeling really weak and just awful. And I went in on day 32 and got a session, and I stopped bleeding that day. And that was really a huge relief. So those are the two that come immediately to mind.
How do you find clients now?
I have a great network of healers that I'm friends with in my local community that refer me, and I do some free group work on specific topics just to introduce people to Body Talk. I have them come in and we'll work on liver health or immune system strength, and we'll kind of all tap together. And then also for distance clients, just through my newsletter at amberleerose.com, and just kind of giving small videos on specific topics to kind of give a small glimpse into the ways that Body Talk can work with the body.
Sure. Those are great ways.
Yeah.
What do you hope to leave in this world as your legacy?
Oh, that's a beautiful question. And that's really wonderful for you to ask me, because it's just in the last, I'd say, 6 months or so that I'm really starting to understand that my story is important and that what I have to say is important. So I think right now, just to give people a sense of the possibility of healing, because I think that's one of the problems in our current, at least Western culture, is the trend is to go to a doctor and then get diagnosed with something, and then often to just carry that diagnosis instead of trying to heal.
Yes.
So just kind of that message that a diagnosis is not a sentence, it's just information, and that healing is like totally possible. And that your physical, mental, emotional, and spiritual selves are all connected.
That's wonderful. I think that's a great legacy to leave.
Thank you.
What's the book that you most recommend to people, and why?
That kind of changes every few months as I read great books. Right now, I'm recommending Brene Brown's work.
Ah, yes.
Yeah, she's just so wonderful. Speaking of kind of a more science and logic-based approach to many of these things, I think she just does a really wonderful job of breaking things down into manageable, understandable ways of moving through life.
And what are you most grateful for right now in your life?
Um, I'm grateful for, and I think this is coming from reading Brene Brown, just looking for joy in ordinary moments. Just sitting with my kittens. These are my first pets in my life, so that brings me a lot of joy. Just the ordinary moments every day.
And what does whole being mean to you?
Whole being kind of reflects back to me what we were just talking about being your whole self and allowing your physical, mental, emotional, spiritual body to all be healthy and vibrant and present in the world and in who you are.
How do you do that for yourself?
For me, that means honoring my emotions even when it's uncomfortable, especially when it's uncomfortable.
Mm.
And speaking my mind and asking for what I need.
Those are challenging things to start doing, aren't they?
Yes, yeah.
I commend you for stepping into that.
Thank you.
If you want to learn more about body talk, and I hope you all do, and if you want to get that free audio meditation, please visit Amberlee at www.amberleerose.com. And again, we'll have that in the show notes. Amberlee, it has been an honor and a pleasure to talk to you. Thank you.
Thank you, Wendy. That was delightful.